working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My game's bigger than your game.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into goblins.
Hail Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Welcome to the Did Nothing Wrong podcast, the show where we cut through the noise and help you make sense of the chaotic information environment around us. I'm Griff Somke. With me today is Karl Folk.
Hello.
Karl, it seems like things are far, far worse out here in the cities than we realize. Things are so bad that we need to call out the National Guard from 19 different states into D.C. and Los Angeles. And now they're threatening to go elsewhere, with New York City and Chicago being the names that are leaked. This is kind of a big, oh shit, they're actually doing it moment. And I don't know how you see this as anything else right now.
So this follows exactly what they've kind of intimated. And, you know, this follows 20 years of kind of behind closed doors and more public view from certain parts of the party that are now in power, that blue states are enemy territory. Right?
Yes.
Like this goes directly in line with some of the Christian nationalist and white nationalist views that blue cities and blue states are enemy territory, literally, that must be conquered by force.
Right.
And, you know, this is, I always hesitate on what and where to be somewhat more alarmed at these days, because it's gotten so fast.
Yeah.
But this is one where people really do need to be concerned.
Very.
This is a huge escalation. And essentially, I think people need to understand that they're calling up an army.
Yes, they absolutely are.
Red State National Guard to invade democratically held cities and states that they see as a threat to their project's power.
This looks a lot like a slow-moving invasion. This looks a lot like if you took an invasion and you slowed it way down and you kind of gradually sent the troops in over a period of time. You know what actually frightens me? And I just kind of had this nightmare scenario earlier today. So I live in the mostly free state of Washington, and I love it here. And I'm really, really proud of the fact that I live here. And I'm specifically proud of my state legislature and my governor for passing a law saying that other states' National Guard aren't allowed to be here without the governor's permission. Now, that's not going to stop Trump.
No.
If he decides to federalize the Guard and send them into Washington state. But it definitely gives a big argument of you are doing this over the heads of the people. You are doing this over the heads of the people's will. But I had this awful scenario. What if Trump nationalizes the Washington Guard and sends them into Seattle?
Right.
You have this like divide and conquer, go, you know, patrol your own citizens type of scenario that is guaranteed to start a bunch of shit on both sides.
Yep.
Man, that's almost just like evil genius shit right there. Just send them in to deal with their own people. We'll get a provocation out of this either way.
Right. Well, and I think that's a real concern. You know, I think increasingly people need to be kind of concerned that there are certain things that we've never considered being an option that may be on the table now.
Yeah.
And that goes both ways, right? Like, I think there's a concern that maybe had that they federalize Blue State National Guard and give them orders that are ostensibly illegal.
Yeah.
And illegal in this case doesn't matter much, as we've seen.
No.
Because this is a lawless regime. But
the sovereign is the one who determines the state of exception.
Yes.
Yeah, we're on full-on Carl Schmitt hours here now.
We are on the Carl Schmitt hours, and there's a friend-enemy distinction, and there's also a power is power, and we can use it
right
in any way we please. This, though, I think my bigger concern is that the blue state governors don't appear outside of a few,
Right.
Washington being one of them.
I'd be willing to
really
bet Pritzker and Tim Walz and a
understand
few
this.
other people are probably going to call bullshit on it and try to fight it out as far as they can.
Yes. But I think that's where it ends for a lot of these governors. And the reality is they need to be kind of in the mindset of interstate mutual aid compacts with other
Right.
blue states. Within that compact structure, there needs to be a thought about what an interstate, kind of mutual defense compact
Right.
would look like in case it comes to pass that those things do happen. This is unthinkable stuff, right? Like this is approaching the levels of conversation that no one wants to have.
Yeah,
which is,
exactly.
what happens when you need to assert that you are the rightful government, that you have claim to the constitutional republic order,
Yeah.
and
What then?
that the federal government no longer does?
Yeah, it becomes like this whole mandate of heaven type of situation to some extent.
Right.
And
Yes.
it gets really interesting, especially if the federal government's first line of saying, yes, we do, yes, we are in charge, is using a state's own citizens who happen to be in the National Guard against them, making it you're either on our side or on their side, and taking that state's military force and putting it right in the middle of that situation. That's
and
terrifying.
it sets up a huge problem, right? Like it sets up a secondary problem, which is then if they federalize,
Right.
and the governor is supposedly in control until federalization, what happens then? Like we don't have a clear roadmap of what happens when you have opposing forces, one at the federal level and one at the state level, giving contradictory orders.
Yeah.
We've seen things that approximate it. We've seen areas where it could have happened, and it doesn't appear it did.
No.
But we're getting towards the question of what do you do when the federal government is illegitimate?
Yeah.
And that is a question that is incredibly tough to grapple with because we don't have a good mechanism for that. We've never had, outside of the Civil War and a few other moments in our history, moments where there is a real question as to the power structure of the democracy and the republic.
Yeah.
And this is, not unique, but it's definitely as close as we've ever come to truly having to grapple with those questions. And certainly in any of our lifetimes, it's probably the only time we've had to grapple with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it bears kind of talking about too. There's one of the mutual follows I've got on Blue Sky posted a thread about this today. The idea of like, all of your self-defense assumptions are wrong. If what you think you're defending yourself against is the stuff you trained for, like say you went and took a couple of handgun classes and they talked to you about something like, robbery or carjacking or that kind of situation, that's not going to fly very far if you think you're resisting against the government. That doesn't get you anywhere. 6 guys show up in kit, you're not going to shoot at them. And if you do, you're going to end up dead real fast.
We don't have any mental frame.
Right.
For the occupation of American cities by the U.S. government. We just don't have a mental framework for that.
Right.
And frankly, it's the same argument I've had in certain spaces, both online and off, with people who, let's say, are extremely far left, claiming they want to run a revolution against the government in the past. Like these are past conversations.
Yep.
You don't.
No, you don't.
It's a different world when you actually are dealing with a militarized force and mechanized militarized force.
Right. You are dealing with the most powerful military on earth. Understand.
Yeah.
The tactics you use should be very different than whatever you think they are right now.
Right. And that goes far beyond the armed response.
It absolutely does.
Like I think that is the tip of the spear and something that's actually further off than people would believe.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say though is everything that comes with that is the real threat, which is surveillance, information warfare, the general, let's just say, upending of kind of your norms. And that is very destabilizing for most people. And that's right now what we're going to be dealing with. Now, if the regime decides to roll regular military, as Trump said, into somewhere like the south side of Chicago,
That's
all bets
not
are
good.
off, right?
Not
like
good.
I think there is a level of disassociation that we're all dealing with when it comes to this, and that's probably good for the moment, because otherwise things could get very dicey, I think.
Yeah.
But that disassociation is going to turn to fear and action if they decide to actually do this. That's a problem for everyone.
Yeah.
And fascists don't need pretexts for their violence. They will do it regardless, but they also know how to provoke a response.
They're not going to turn down a pretext if they get one.
No.
They're absolutely not. And they're going to do their best to get one.
Correct.
Yeah.
They don't need it, but they will try for it. And that's, I mean, looking at what these leaked names are, it would appear they're going specifically into places where they know they will get a response that plays well on TV for them. And that indicates there's some kind of logic to this, and that there's some kind of strategy, albeit not one that may be generally coherent.
Right. Right.
And I think a lot of people, yes, huge air quotes. It's really tough though, right? Because this looks like a whole bunch of things at the same time. And it is a whole bunch of things at the same time. So when we're dealing with fascist terror, the key word there is terror.
Yes.
And that's what they want, is they want us to fear them and to be in so much fear that we are frozen. We've already seen that's out the fucking window.
I mean, see the last episode where we showed you the guy throwing the sub sandwich in the face of the FBI agent, and then hours later, 20 folks in kit showing up at this guy's door and arresting him.
Yep.
That's a message. That's a message. Don't fuck with us.
We're seeing a lot of messaging through the form of state violence. That is kind of the norm in a unfolding authoritarian move.
Yeah.
This is calculated to do that, but also people, what it appears they don't realize is, while they are trying to, let's say, build pretext, even though we know they don't need it, it's also giving permission who are against them permission.
Yeah.
There's a level of permission starting to be built into people that the response is going to have to be greater than anything else. And that is incredibly powerful, right? And it's what we saw with the protests earlier this summer. It's what we've seen with some of the continuing Tesla takedown protests. Is this is getting normal, everyday citizens into a place where what 2 years ago might have felt really unnatural to them and scary is now just a part of your day to day.
Because you are so done with it. You are just so done.
Yeah. And, anyone who listens to this, anyone who follows me online knows that I have a real hard-nosed approach, let's say, to the Democratic Party's response. This is...
you've been accused of being a little too, timid on some of your criticisms. We're going to have to talk about that. You don't quite say it with enough of your chest, that kind of thing.
No, the reality is, though,
that's what they say.
My issue is with the party, not the people.
Sure.
The people on the ground every day are showing that they are more than willing to turn this up to 25 if that's what's needed. And the Democratic Party, like the elected officials of it, have failed us. But the population behind them that wants that safety, that change that they thought they had with these people, is still there, and they're still fighting in a way that I don't think most people thought they would. I don't think a lot of people in their heart of hearts knew that they had it in them.
Nope.
And now that they do, they're in on it, because it doesn't just feel good to be a part of a movement and to be part of something that makes you feel like you have community. It feels good to know that there are other people out there who feel just as outraged, just as scared, just as angry as you are. And I would be very interested to see some national polling on the actual anger.
Oh,
There
God.
is bubbling around in this country because it right now, I think all of us listening and anyone who follows the news can feel that there's a shift going on from being like, what the hell is going on, to, well, maybe it's time to stop asking what's going on and step foot
Right.
into the next step of pushback, which is protests, which is organizing, which is going out and finding 5 of your neighbors and doing the, hey, how's it going? What's going on thing.
Yeah.
That stuff builds on itself, right? And what we're starting to see is I think, a true community response. And I do not think the Republicans fully understand that they are kicking the bear
Yes.
very hard and doing it in such a way that it's not subtle.
No.
Right? Like Trump term 1 wasn't subtle. Let's be very clear. But they had enough time, up until the murder of George Floyd and the pandemic, they had enough time that things were kind of like, well, this is just who Trump is. This is blah, 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 all the bullshit we heard. And this is not that. This is the fully authoritarian Trump, and it's just starting to get into the revenge phase is my belief. Like, we are just actually seeing the beginning of this. But he's already kicked so hard into the bear's den in what, we're 8 months in, 7 months in? I mean,
7 months.
We're not very far into this, that there's almost nothing else you can do now but keep kicking the bear.
Right.
And that's a problem when you have a double down mentality and you're in for the terror as much as getting your agenda solved. I don't think you know what that does to a population. And we may be docile, we may be very stuck in our kind of like, we don't want to disrupt our status quo. It's already been disrupted.
Yeah.
We're seeing that, right? Like, and it's the same thing with the structure of law being resuited to a Schmittian power structure.
Yep.
And an argument for, we are the law, we apply it to you.
Yep. This is what we do. We are the ones that make that decision.
Yep. No, and that's one of the toughest ones with all of this. And it goes to the other things we were saying early on. Like, it really does raise questions then at the state level of what do you do to counter truly wild choices based purely on the idea of in-group, out-group, who has power is the power.
Right.
And those who are designated as not being the powerful are designated as the enemy. What do we do then, right? It's the same argument that's been going on in the anti-trans and TERF movement the entire time to try and invert, reverse, and destroy a group that is a minority worldwide and one that is highly targeted for violence both at the state level and at the social level.
Right.
And say that they are, quote, elites.
Because they're a safe group to attack. Because they are a
Exactly.
safe group for most people to attack. I mean, you can't even get Democrats to agree on the idea that these people have rights. So
exactly.
You can punch them as hard as you want to if you're a GOP politician, and you're not going to lose a vote for it at all, ever.
Correct. And what we've seen, this is I think for me, the Schmittian in-out group argument that we're seeing here so grotesquely illustrated. Has happened. I mean, it's the same thing that's happened in Britain under Labour, right? They have turned to the right on trans issues and are starting to turn much harder right on immigration issues because of this same set of things going on. And that's the language games.
Yep.
That's the inversion of who is elite versus who is not, and remaking the most at risk the elites.
Yeah.
Or, the protected groups are actually the strongest and scariest things in society. Looking at this through a sociological lens, this is the social reproduction of authoritarian power. And it's also the social inversion of groups. And what that means is we are going to hear the same language that we've heard for years that's normally there to protect people and to give groups the ability to act as a part of the broader community, turn into the language of exclusion
Right.
and the language of, in some cases, elimination, which is what we've seen here, not just from the far right, but increasingly the GOP is the language of elimination.
Yeah.
And that's why it works there, right? Like, this is very much a ebb and flow of a tide, but that tide is designed to erode someone's personhood, someone's
the whole
citizenship.
concept of, people being human, because this for them is a test market. They want to see if they can get away with doing it to trans people. They want to see if they can get away with doing it to people who are undocumented, experiencing homelessness. They're going to go after the people that don't have a whole lot of support and a whole lot of people sticking up for them at a high level. People that in some cases the mainstream establishment wishes would go away. Just go away. So they're not going to step up for this one because they see a chance to get rid of something they think is a problem and try to blame the other guys for doing it. So they're not going to try and fight back. They're going to be like, this is terrible. We're rending our hair and gnashing our teeth and garments and all that shit. But we're not really all that bummed out about any of this that's happening because it solves a problem for us. And we get to beat our opponents for doing it and being horrible, heartless assholes.
Right. And it's a tough situation, right? Because most people aren't tuned in to the political machinations at the level that some of us are. And it sounds, for a lot of people, they're going to hear things that they think they've been hearing forever and not realize they've been repackaged to sell abomination and to sell the destruction of humans.
Yeah.
And that, that's part and parcel with the language being used to justify what looks to be a ground invasion of democratically held cities.
Right.
It's the arguments that have been made as to why now they're starting to go after Obergefell and other things. There's a level of erosion that they have unleashed socially that's replicating itself. Yeah. And that's not some giant conspiracy on the part of the Republicans. It's how society works. They, one of the powers that fascism has is to rewire the social reproduction mechanisms and the systems that go with it. And we're seeing that happen.
Yeah.
When if we think of society in a system of nodes and points where those nodes then disseminate culture and social norms, et cetera, to the broader population, and that is a always moving, always kind of adapting system, well, then it makes some sense why the fascists as a larger group did what they did and went after specific parts of the media, the digital infrastructure, and why the internet and segregating the internet and balkanizing it is so high on their list of things to do. Because if you can't have a coherent conversation at a national or state level about any of these topics, it makes these other erosions
a lot easier
much
to do.
More effective. Yeah.
A lot easier to do. I mean, you lock people into their own little reality tunnels, and next thing you know, they don't hear anything else.
No, and at the same time, we're being flooded by corporate messaging and other things trying to say this is the only way, or this is wrong, when it's clearly just a nothing thing. And, this is one of the probably most toxic environments anyone could be in.
Yeah.
And that's outside of the physical manifestations of that we're seeing with like these threats of troops or with the accelerated use of federal forces in law enforcement at the state level.
Yes.
And so it's just, this is one ugly machine that's starting to function, and they're starting to get their legs under them. And that's why I think people do need to be very clear. Like, this is an opening stage.
Yeah.
Not some end state for something. This is
this week it's 1,700 guard troops. What's it going to be next week?
Right.
What are they going to call up the next week? Is there going to be any pushback from a single governor on this? Doubtful.
Well, I think if it, Pritzker
Yeah.
to me is my bellwether for the Midwest, at least right now, where he is saying some stuff that is right at the edge of being really interesting.
Yeah.
When he messaged I think it was yesterday, which would be Friday. I think it was Friday. It may have been Thursday. He messaged something about state sovereignty and how he's willing to protect state sovereignty. That sounds very benign because we've heard it from the far right in southern states doing fuckery for 20 years. But when you actually get down to what he's saying, or appears to be saying,
yeah,
that indicates there's a next step. And if that's the case, that's someone who's thinking in the bigger ballpark, which is we may have to defend our state's sovereignty from a federal
takeover
military force.
And we never thought we were going to be the ones in this position.
Right.
Ever.
Correct.
This is just so foreign to, I think, most people on this side of the fence thinking that they never really seriously game planned that. Where this has been the main narrative for the right for years and years and years. They've been selling government takeover coming for decades.
Yeah.
It's in their DNA. They're used to this. They are absolutely used to this idea. And there are times that I think part of the reason I haven't cracked up about some of this kind of stuff is because I listened to so much, so much hardcore punk as a kid. You listen to MDC, you listen to the Dead Kennedys, you listen to all of these bands who are basically talking about this kind of thing. And, when it happens when you're a lot older, it sort of seems like, yep, they kind of told me that was going to happen. That was sort of my childhood right there, was hearing about this kind of stuff, and it all kind of comes back. But, it makes me feel sorry for people who didn't have that experience, because you have a harder time processing what the fuck is going on. But, Jello Biafra had a lot of this called back in the late 70s, early 80s, really.
Well, yeah. And for me, as a sociologist, I joke now, like sociology radicalized me more than anything else ever could have. But one of the things that I read early on when I was very young, prior to doing any academic, was a lot of what the Panthers were saying during their height. And they were some of the first, if not the first people to say the United States government is fascist. And they were obviously looking at this through the racial fascism lens of the post-Civil War South, of Jim Crow, of all these different things. But that's exactly right. And for me, at like 15, 16, reading that in a similar way to listening to punk late, as at about the same time, and now as an adult, you really realize that that's a different view of the world, and one that for a long time was seen as very, very, very outside the norm.
Yeah.
The reality is, and it's a tough reality, is that that's correct.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, for non-white folks of all stripes, and for women, and for everyone not covered as a white man with money, for a majority of our time as a country, they lived under brutal oppression. And we have done a disservice to ourselves as a country by not truly educating on the brutal reality of slavery, because that is the heart and soul of America's fascist problem. It's also something that you see reflected in European fascism and Nazism. And it's all tied together in this supremacist outlook.
Right.
That has turned into other branches of things. But America's proto-fascist past is now our present reality.
Yeah.
And people really, I think, wanted to believe the myth.
Right.
And that's made it so much harder now to deal with the reality that the myth was just that, a myth.
Yeah.
And the reality was something much darker.
Nobody wants to think you're a bad guy. Nobody wants to think that you are a bad guy. And, for the most part, most people I think aren't. I think most people basically are reasonably good people who may have a blind spot or three when it comes to
Or
certain
5.
subjects, but that doesn't make
Right.
you the bad person. That makes you
No.
somebody who just hasn't thought about it, yet. Hasn't really
or-
thought about it.
Most people just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think the thing that the summer of 2020 really showed is that most people just don't know.
Yeah.
It's not that they're stupid. It's not that they're bad. It's not that they're, evil. It's literally that they just don't know. And that is a fault of the education system. We could get into that
Oh, yeah.
for years.
Oh, yeah.
But the reality is, if someone's willing to learn and listen to those who are actually saying these things from lived experience and from decades of abuse and problems, they're going to come a long way. We saw that in 2020. One of the most powerful parts of 2020 was that people were sitting down and really sitting with this tough reality that
Right.
white supremacy pervades our lives in this country, whether we want to believe it or not. And now we have the tougher one of being in a situation where people are starting to hear, at least on the ground, the reality that this fascism is both new in the sense that it is much more totalizing than past iterations, but also it's deeply a part of us. And to understand why Trump would call red state National Guard is part of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a reverse of what the federal government did to desegregate.
Yeah. It's
This
like
is
we are
them-
literally running back the 20th century.
Yes.
We are
And
running back everything
and-
that we accomplished in the 20th century. Jack Posobiec and Charlie Kirk are going to get the civil rights movement repealed.
Yes.
They're going to try.
And that's been their goal, right? They've said it clearly.
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
they said it
audio
out
clips.
Fucking out loud. We talked
I mean,
about
we
it.
have
We played audio clips of this, and they keep saying it. So at some point, you got to take them very seriously and say, this is where the end game is.
And that's exactly right. And I think, if we look at what we're seeing right now through that lens, both of what we understand about our history and what their stated goals are, along with the understanding that their backers, whether that's dominionists or the techno-fascist side with people like Thiel and others, it's all the same goal. It's just repackaged differently for what their internal machinery looks like, right? So for Thiel and the tech side, it's a return to, some glorious objectivist, Randian
past that never actually happened the way they think it did.
Yeah. So
You're not John Galt. Knock it the fuck off.
Yeah, please just get to the funny part. It's one of those things. But no, like, it's once you start looking at it through those lenses, you really start to see what the game is.
Yeah.
And that means we do have to actually, as citizens in this state, have the hard conversation in our head and with our friends and neighbors and trusted ones and elected officials at the state and local level about what do we do with a group who is signaling that the game is a ground invasion. Yeah.
And I understand that to some extent, especially the higher up you get on that chain, there's conversations that just aren't going to get had with you as, a civilian. Yeah. But it is nice to live in a state where you can be told and believe it that they've been game planning this since election day last year. Like the idea of, okay, so what happens if they do this? What happens if they do that? And there's a certain reassurance to that while it isn't a guarantee if they show up in your town with, APCs and ARs, what it is the idea that they've thought about this and our people are going to fight as hard as they can within the bounds that they can, right?
Yep, exactly. No, and that's the thing. Like, I think we are so caught up as a nation in the shiny object political conversation that a lot of people are missing that there are definitely, I would assume here in Minnesota, we haven't seen anything super public, but I would assume that there are similar conversations going on just around the way that the city might be handled, right?
Yeah.
Because Tim Walz, he has some flaws, but the guy actually gets force because he was part of and
Yeah.
is part of the National Guard structure. It's part of the reason that we saw what we did during George Floyd is because deploying the National Guard
It's a big
is
step.
It's risky.
Mm-hmm.
It's risky. And I think knowing that here, again, it doesn't protect you if they're federalized, but it does change the dynamic a bit, knowing that there's at least a conversation or two that's been had, like you said, about the just in
What
the
happens if they do
outside
this?
chance.
What happens if they do this thing over here?
Right.
You know, and that's smart. That's the kind of conversation I want the top military officials in my state and the governor to have.
Yeah.
Because they're looking down, pardon the expression, they're looking down the barrel of what could potentially be, you know, a federal invasion.
Yeah.
At which point you need to start thinking about how you're going to handle that.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been reading a lot of Lincoln again. God help me. But, you know, it's one of those things when you read through that era and what others, not just Lincoln, but others in Congress were talking about, there are some real parallels where people didn't exactly understand, like, what do we do now that they're calling, you know, that they're seceding? What do we do in X, Y, and Z situation where we have, you know, family members essentially going to different sides? What, you know, like, how do we do this when there are county lines that are going in different county, you know? And this is so much messier than that. It's really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
From purely a historic, like, oh, this is a mess.
Oh,
It falls right in line. It falls right in line with everything we know about modern civil conflict. That it's not like red state, blue state, southern
and
state,
anybody
northern
who's
state.
thinking along those lines is just like a simpleton, really, when it comes down to it.
It's a very old-fashioned vision of what this looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And
that red state, blue state frame, man, fuck, that did more damage. I swear to God. Anyway, sorry.
It's one of the most dangerous things we did was make the land the map. And it's really upsetting. It's really fucking upsetting because it makes this a nuanced conversation about what do you do, like, with a state. I mean, hell, look at Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Like Minnesota, like a lot of quote blue states, it's blue because the major cities vote.
Yes.
The out state I wouldn't say is far right by any means here. There are elements of it, but it tends to be the second and third tier suburbs. And the rest of the state is just some form of conservative, generally not, though, let's throw an appeal to heaven flag out front and start, you know, having a good old time. It's
yeah,
you know, and that's how a lot of states are made up, right? So, like, what do you do then, right? Because that becomes more akin to something that people don't recognize as civil conflict.
Yeah,
right?
because, like, say, for instance, Oregon decides it's going to secede from the United States for whatever reason. Well, 3/4 of Oregon doesn't vote the way Portland, Eugene, Salem do. Correct. And that landmass is already being courted by Idaho as part of this whole greater Idaho thing that they're trying to pull off. So
God fucking help us.
That's where that half of Oregon probably throws up the fence and says, fine, you go be seceded. We're going to go be part of Idaho.
Right.
That's what this looks like in practice.
That's just it. There's no strong delineation, right?
No.
Like, this isn't a state thing. This is literally a neighborhood by neighborhood thing. And that is a wholly different kind of conceptual framework for most people to work off of what a, quote, conflict looks like, right? And what we've seen in other major countries that have gone down this path in the modern era is it is literally neighborhood by neighborhood. It is not 6 southern states and their guns go against 6 other northern states and their guns. It's literally, okay, well, someone's flying a drone from this neighborhood over to this neighborhood and bombing it.
It's Northern Ireland with way more guns and a much bigger landmass to try and police.
Yeah. And a much scarier array of personally held weaponry, not just guns. Like the guns, we have a problem.
That's cool.
But-
you all had some Armalites. Guess what we got?
Like literally, the amount of people in this country with access to what is essentially an airborne bombing mechanism through both commercial grade and 3D printed drones
Mm-hmm.
is one of those things we don't talk about.
Yeah.
And have never had reason to talk about. But with what we've seen in Ukraine and other places, that's high on my list of concerns, because the civil conflict thing that happens is it looks very irregular.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily look like APCs in your neighborhoods.
No.
It looks like, why does it sound like there are big mosquitoes in my yard, and why are they only targeting X, Y, and Z?
Mm-hmm.
Why, like irregular warfare, which is what modern civil war looks like. So bombing, soft targets, the whole deal.
Yeah.
Looks much more
ugly.
like like what happened with the far right's attacks on abortion clinics, on the Murrah building.
Yeah.
Some of the Nazi shooters, right? Like that is what irregular warfare looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not guys in fatigues on your block with a howitzer.
No, that's the
hanging
regular
down the
kind
block.
of warfare.
That's a part of it.
That's the
but
regular
that's not
kind.
the whole thing,
No, the
right?
irregular stuff is the stuff you don't immediately recognize as military activity.
Correct. And we've already seen
Yeah.
that for years here, right? Like if we wanted to make the argument, I think you could make that argument for at least 30 years here. We've seen elements of what would be irregular warfare
Sure.
if there was a state goal behind it. We now understand there is a state goal. So I think we could make an argument at some point that was part of it. Now, in this moment, we haven't seen anything. To be clear, we're not seeing that yet.
No.
In sustained ways, we're not seeing like targeted, the targeted violence at, let's
Mhm.
say, like Democratic polling place. We're not seeing
Right.
any of this stuff yet. So we're still not quite at the point where it's like, oh shit. But
What we are
social-
seeing is a constant push
Correct.
push to
Yeah.
see how much farther we can go before
there's a
we
social
engender
pressure
a bad
variant here
response.
that's really bad.
Yeah.
The social pressure here is really bad. There's a whole bunch of social kindling that's
Mhm.
really uncomfortable because it is set up in such a way that it feeds the far right's race war narratives and a whole bunch of shit, because that's the way that they've aimed their attacks is
Mhm.
on the most vulnerable and those who historically have been marginalized. And, I think there's a lot of people don't fully understand that something like the Turner Diary
Yeah.
was not just a fantasy, but a script.
Mhm. Yeah, it was a
And
myth
we've
until it wasn't.
we've said this about Nazi groups, and we've said this about people like McVeigh and others. But I think what the hardest thing to deal with for me on a certain level has been with MAGA, but now specifically with the second term, is the government is made up of guys like McVeigh and like the heroes, quote unquote, of the Turner Diary.
Oh yeah.
And that is a huge problem in that they have created a mythos that looks a lot like what they're enacting now. And that mythos is horrifying.
Yeah. It's terrifying. And it really just feels like the only solution to this is to get through it. And the only way
is.
we get through this is by making sure that, like you've been saying, the community is strong around you, your local community, your friend network, the people that, you actually interact with. Make sure you know your neighbors, make sure that you have some idea of kind of who they are, what they do, etc. Make sure that, you're kind of looking out for each other and you're maybe exchanging food and exchanging tips on like, hey, how do I fix this? Get those networks of mutual aid going. Because like I said, I'm coming back to this. The idea of any kind of armed resistance at this point is just ridiculous, and people should not go around saying it.
No.
It is stupid. It is not there.
and it's just it's gonna hurt you more in the long run than the honest response, which is you and your neighbors
Mm-hmm.
being able to share information, being able to share whatever it is. If you need medication, X, Y, or Z,
Sure. Mutual aid.
those things, true mutual aid.
Mm-hmm.
That's far more effective than thinking you're going to take on the federal government. You're
Right.
not.
You're not
This
going to
isn't
take
the
on the
fucking
federal
Wolverines.
government. Don't do that.
No.
We need you around.
This isn't the Wolverines, right?
No.
Like, this is very much something that I think a lot of Americans have a fantasy of being.
Well, they think they
maybe
know
not
how it's
being-
going to go, and they don't. They think this is going to be your, Red Dawn, your 1776 fantasy, and it's like, no, that's not how it's going to work.
No.
When you are in this position, you have no business trying to pick a fight.
And
You just don't.
in a fight, you will assuredly lose.
Exactly.
And it's one thing if these guys start shooting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wholly different conversation than just protection at that point.
Right.
And we're not there by any stretch. And, people want to get down on like, well, it's not enough to just have community. It's a huge portion of it.
Right.
Because community turns into an understanding too of what norms are within that group. And if you really are, if you guys are doing things in a way that is straightforward and is literally just the community kind of sharing of knowledge, goods, hell, just grilling and meeting new people, that goes a long way. And voluntary association, for example, like I'm going to pull a little bit of anarchist shit out. Like voluntary association changes the dynamic again, right?
Yes.
And being able to have this decentralized kind of community-led view of both the ability to say, no, this is wrong and this is why, and work from there, but also, you're not welcome to certain elements. Those are incredibly powerful things. And to jump from an anarchist view of that kind of thing to the sociological view, building community, let's say in your neighborhood or across a couple blocks of your city, also allows you to have more eyes on the street, which then allows you to understand what is actually going on, and be able to do those other things more effective.
Gets you out of your bubble. Gets you out of the idea of thinking that you know how everything's going. It's another whole pair of eyes. It's another whole pair of reports or senses. And every time you put somebody like that on the board, it's like, well, I know a little more about what's going on now and what my neighborhood is capable of, what we might need to be better at.
Right. And what that fosters as well is something that is kind of sidelong to a lot of this, but incredibly important in these moments, which is understanding conflict resolution and de-escalation at a personal or very small scale. And, if you and your neighbors, let's say, are all in this little group of community and you have problems, well, how does that work? Well, you get into a community-based kind of mediation almost, right? At that point where it's just like, this is screwed up. How do we deal with it?
And I think we make that sound a little more complicated and precious than it actually is, because a lot of the time it's like, how do people actually fix problems in the real world? They talk it out.
Exactly.
They sit down and they say, here's my issue with this. Here's my issue with this. What do we have in the middle? What can we give on? What can they give on? How do we make this thing kind of work from a collaborative perspective, where we make it sound like it's some kind of hard thing, and it isn't. I mean, humans have been doing this since there's been humans.
It is the thing we learn in kindergarten, most of us, right? Which is like, just talk it out. Use your words. And literally, like, 90% of the issues that people have in small groups can be fixed around a barbecue with a Mai Tai or a beverage of your choice. It's not some, there's not some like high council shit. And so, like, I think for a lot of people, if they get into that framework, even if the worst doesn't come, what you've done is you've built what we consider to be the principles of democracy
Right.
into your day-to-day life, right? And I think for a lot of people, they hear mutual aid, they hear community building, they hear, you know, kind of free association, and they think, oh, this is some radical, you
Not
know,
really.
leftist thing, when the reality is this is very close
Yep.
to the framers' intention of what democracy could be.
People love jargon, but it doesn't have to be that complicated a lot of the time. It's
No.
kind of like take out the jargon for a minute and ask yourself, do I really I probably already do most of this stuff. I don't necessarily.
You do. I can guarantee it. If you work in an office, you do
Mhm.
95% of this shit already.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a part of your daily life. You just
I mean,
don't
if you
think
work
about
at a
it.
hot dog cart with two people, you have office politics to deal with.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't matter
Exactly.
how few people, you're still going to have politics involved in your workplace in terms of who does what, how does things get done, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
you know how all this kind of stuff works. Start applying it at a big level.
Literally. And like it doesn't need to be some mystical hierarchical thing, because this isn't about hierarchy. It's literally about a bunch of people coming together
Yeah.
to hang out.
Mhm.
You don't need to worry about these other things that come with it that a lot of us, I think, get bogged down in. And I think a lot of people want to think that some of the things that get talked about, like I said, are kind of leftist or progressive. When the reality is, like, this truly is the stuff of daily life, just
Right.
in society. It's common decency at some level. It's all these things that we do without thinking about. And it shouldn't scare people to say, look, maybe I should know 3 of my neighbors, and maybe 5 of their friends will show up eventually. And, you know, hell, that's,
You don't
if
know who you
nothing
might
else,
live
we'll get a
next to.
bocce ball.
Yeah. You don't know who
You
you might
know,
live next to. Seriously. You
yeah.
just don't know.
And it's that, and that, like, I think, you know, all of us are looking for answers in how to, quote, resist fascism,
Sure.
resist the oncoming train that we're all seeing. This is the true resistance, is making it through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds so kind of cliche, but the reality is we have very little in this world when it comes down to it. If we strip away all of the Americanisms of our lives, what we have are each other, our families, whatever we call home,
Right.
if we're lucky enough to have those things. And beyond that, it's kind of, we don't have much. And
No.
we have not invested in those things as a society for a long time. So if we can rebuild that structure, those groups, we go a long way to doing what sounds like a lot harder work than it is,
Right.
in rebuilding the foundational aspects of a democratic society, and the thinking that goes along with it, which is, my neighbors are out, our kids are out here playing in the yard, their kids can hang out for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We can do this. And it, you know, like, that doesn't sound like mutual aid to a lot of people, but you know what?
But it
Taking
is.
care of your neighbor's kids
Ask a
is
parent.
mutual aid.
Ask any
Yeah.
parent you know.
Yep.
You just kind of have
Literally.
to open your mindset a little bigger in some of these cases. You know, don't think of it always just as this tiny little thing. It's almost everything you do once you get there. And
Yep.
I think that's what, I mean, if I'm not obviously your boss and I'm not obviously your mom, but I would
Thank
like
God.
to suggest that if you haven't done that maybe that would be a good project for you. Find out the name of at least one neighbor who lives
Yep.
close to you. Just, you know, go over, say hi. Hey, I live here. You know, just wanted to let you know, here's me. If you need anything, come up with something I can help you with, please let me know. You know, it's easy.
Literally. And I might make a recommendation. I rarely do make recommendations on the pod for, like, if you want to know more.
Mhm.
One of the best things, if you have, if you're listening and you haven't read it yet, go get Let This Radicalize You by Kelly Hayes and Papa. It's one of the best texts you can read on what it means to organize your world.
Right.
And that's what part of this is. Again, it sounds super leftist and probably out of range for certain people.
Sure.
Organizing is the same thing you do when you go try and get your kid on a baseball team. It's the same thing that happens when you go to your school and work with the school board and they're getting ready to do a play and you need to get cash together.
People think they can't do these things, but they already do these things.
Every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. And I'll just say it again. Go get, if you want more, Let This Radicalize You is stellar. And it does get to some of what we're talking about a lot more, but it really comes down to the way we win is we get through it.
Yes. And again, from both of us, from all of us, from everybody, please get through it. Stay safe, get through it. Think, and get through it. Because that's, like Karl said, going to be the very important part of all of this is figuring out a way to get through it with all your marbles intact. So we'll see if we can pull that off.
It's been a chore already for some of us.
Sure
and
has.
You know what?
Here we are.
We'll come back. And here we are. And I think for a lot of people, the fear right now and the anger is ever present. You know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
But you got to make it through to the other side. And that means.
And you're all smart people. You listen to this podcast, you're all smart people. You absolutely will make it through to the other side, I think.
Yeah, I do too. But that means that means though you're going to need more than what you got already, probably, because none of us have the full.
None of us have enough.
No,
but we have faith in you
for this.
We have faith that you can do it.
Yep.
So go forth
and multiply.